Even with what feels to be a very deliberately paced story structure in this episode, it is very densely packed. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. The second of the Friday releases between Dexter and this. It's going to be a long couple of weeks. Second one is Silo, episode 5, called The Descent, or just Descent. And we pick up where the Mechanical Four are making their way down the silo while basically two factions are sort of coming at them from both sides. We learn immediately after the Mechanical Four, as they make their way down, the groups that are coming towards them are growing. The numbers are growing larger and larger. As the story spreads, the news spreads, as the bounty spreads, the amount of people that want them dead is growing. And so they have to find a way to get off this path because they stay on it, they're going to die. They also realize that both Carla and Martha are slowing Shirley and Knox down as a whole, so they have to figure out a way to just take a moment to get some breath so that they can sort of regroup and get back on their path. They bring up the Porters, and so Martha's like, "Hey, you have an in with the Porters. Do you think we can stop by there?" And Carla's like, "Yeah, I think we can." So they make their way there. While they're doing that, Simtek goes back to his wife, Camille, and contemplates how much or how well Bernard knows that Sims was sort of involved in everything that happened with Meadows. Before they can finish their conversation, Bernard is in their kitchen, making himself a cup of coffee, just sitting there, standing there chilling. And he immediately tries to figure out how much does Camille know, because he knows that Camille used to work with under Rob, and so does he come home and pillow talk to you about the job? Camille pretty much lies and says, "No, I do what the pack tells me. I'm a steadfast wife. I come home, basically, I come home, cook, make meals, and take care of the baby. I don't do anything work related whatsoever. That's just his business because the pack tells me to do so," which is a load of shit. And Bernard smells it. He's like, "Well, cool. If I recall correctly, Rob tells me that you guys read the pact every night." He's like, "Yeah, we do that every night." It's like, "Cool, can you go find that pack?" And she goes, because it seems like originally he doesn't want to sort of bring this information in front of Camille if she doesn't quite know everything that's going on. He quickly learns that Camille is in on everything later on in this episode. At this moment, he's not aware of how much Camille is sort of helping or playing this sort of back and forth game with what's happening with Sims. But when Camille goes to get the pack, Bernard talks to Sims and says, like, "Look, I know you did this. I don't trust you, and you lied to me. And you made me do something that I didn't want to do," which he very much did not want to kill Meadows. You can tell so much so by even the way that he sort of did kill her in a peaceful way and giving her the option to go like look and see a version of whatever outside world she was looking for. He cared about her. He didn't want to do what was made to do. So because of that, he's like, "Look, I can't have you as being the head of judicial who works tandem with me. I just can't have you doing that. But I also can't sideline you because people of this silo know you, they respect you, they understand you, they know who you are. So I'm going to have to put you in the place that Meadows was in. You're going to become Judge Sims." And so when the pack gets there, he swears him in on the pack and says, "You will be the new judge," which um, sort of undercuts him because he's not going to be able to get privy to everything the judicial does that Bernard wants to have done. He's going to hide some of that. He may won't be quite the puppet that Meadows is because that's just not how he is, but that's what that job is sort of in place for. And he knows that. It's like, you just put me here as a placeholder so you can placate me and use me as a figurehead to these people, but I really don't have any value anymore. But Camille and her power hungry ass is not going to sit well with that. So the Mechanical Four make it to the Porters and meet up with Calvin. It's actually the Mechanical Three at this point. Knox stays out, and they're having a convo about bartering. They're trying to barter and figure out a way to get safe passage down to Mechanical. They're going back and forth. Carla's like, I got some bourbon." He's like, "That's not going to be enough. I'm going to need something from Juliet." And so Martha gives him a trinket of Juliet's, which she says is Juliet's, but it's actually her version of the same trinket. It's like, I don't have Juliet's version. And so that's enough between that, the bourbon, and some coils. That's enough to say, all right, cool, I will go ahead and create a safe passage for you. The problem is the idea that the passage that she's using isn't going to work to take all four of them down because Knox isn't present and he's a big lumbering man. So she's like, the weight of that's not going to fit him. He's like, well, that's your only option. And Carla is bringing up, it's like, well, you have the like sort of cable system that you guys have, which isn't up on the up and up with the pack. I understand that. And Calvin's like, yeah, that's illegal. We can't do that. And before they can really get into it too much, Knox comes barging in and is like, hey, Raiders are here. We got to go right now. Because Calvin dimed them out. He was pretty much the Lando Calrissian of this series, and says, hey, look, I'm going to go with the best offer. And so he dimed them out to the Raiders and Judicial, putting them on the run again. We go back to Jules and Solo, and Jules mentions that she didn't get a fire helmet when she went to go get the fire suit, and to try and prevent herself from having to go back underwater again and harming herself, putting herself underwater, which she doesn't want to do, but she's injured in a bad way, and she doesn't really want to go back through that again. So she's trying to see if her space helmet, the helmet that she came there with, will be suitable enough if she fixes it to get the job done. So at that point, she kind of asks, like, well, hold on, I have a question. You still have lights in that IT room, and you still have stuff. How is the generator still working if it's underwater? And Solo says, well, there's a power supply outside of the silo that powers it, just outside. I don't know where. He kind of like does a little map, like here and here. I have a feeling he knows more than he's saying, but he's like, nope, it's here, here, or there. And she's like, well, okay. How did the generator become submerged in the first place? Like, that just seemed like a terrible idea. And Solo says that when the Raiders and Judicial, their first idea to kind of suss out mechanical was to submerge them underwater. It's like, well, by the time they did so, mechanical came up, they weren't able to stop the water, and it just became too much of a burden for them. It's like, yeah, they thought flooding those in mechanical was a good idea. Turns out it wasn't. Jules mentioned that there's a water pump. She saw one on level 30, that might be able to free up some of the water, sort of lower it a bit to buy some time and to get some of that water stopped from rising. And Solo's immediately like, well, hey, Jules, can you do that? Can you help me do that? And Jules like, I don't have time for that. I got my own thing. He's like, well, you got time. You got days to do that. He's like, well, you have 10 months before this water run comes up and 13 months before it's completely submerging you. And Solo's kind of like, well, hold on. I have an actual date. You don't know days wise how long it takes you. And Joe's like, we're not having this conversation. Like, I don't care about I'm here for one reason. So whatever we're talking about is irrelevant. Mr. Rick Amundsen, who used to be under Sims, is now the head of Judicial. And he updates Bernard on the lowdown of where the Mechanical Four are. And he refers to the Raiders as his people, like that he has taken ownership of them. And Bernard quickly shuts that down, like, nah, I want you to know real quick. You might be the head of Judicial, but the Raiders do not serve you at all. And he makes that abundantly clear and quick for him to know his place. Billings, with Hank, learns of Meadows' death, Sims's appointment as the new judge, and Amundsen as the new head of Judicial. He gets all of that in a quick, digestible form. He also learns that the person who killed Meadows, or the people who killed Meadows, were the two leads of Mechanical, Shirley and Knox, which just seems odd to him, but he informs Hank of that as well, who happens to be present when he gets that information. While they're going down, trying to figure out their next move, Martha and Carla decide to split off from Shirley and Knox because they feel like they're slowing them down. And so they head out their own way. But essentially, Carla and Martha stop. And Carla's like, look, you got to go on your own. You got to go with them or do your own thing because these folks don't know you. You had the luxury of being underground for so long that they don't know what you look like, that you are an enigma to them. But for me, I stand out. I'm head of supplies. I was a face. They know who I am. So I don't have the luxury of hiding in plain sight the way you do. You need to get away from me. It's because it's a bigger danger being around me than it is not. So go do your own thing. I'm giving it in. I'm calling it. Kathleen Billings uh, meets Dr. Nichols. She's helping, and he's helping, sort of help people who are hurt in the riots, getting some type of medical attention. While they're doing that, some raiders come down and ask Dr. Nichols to come with him, and they take him to go meet Bernard, who is in his office, and he's presenting trinkets of Juliet's to give to Dr. Nichols. He's like, look, I want you to have these. Normally, these would get circulated back into population, but because they were jewels, I don't want them to go back into circulation because they may become bigger than what they are. They may become more bigger relics and sort of make more known, and I don't want that. I think they would do best with you. So I'm asking you, I'm telling you, you should take them from me. Dr. Nichols is very much like, well, I don't. What if I don't? Like, what if I don't take them? What if you do have to put them back into? What if you have to keep them? um, what does that mean? Because like you've taken everything from me. I have nothing else to lose. Like I lost my wife, I lost my son, I lost now my daughter's dead. There's nothing you can do left to take anything away from me. Bernard's like, well, you still have some type of hope. You still have the duty of the silo within you because I saw how much you were helping those who were hurt in the riot. Like you did that out of your duty to the silo. And he's like, quickly, hold on. No. I did not do that out of my duty for the silo. Don't get that twisted. Don't get that confused. I don't give a damn about the silo. I did not do that out of my duty for the silo. Like I look to people that we have lied to consistently that have hope and glimmer in their eyes. And I know that they don't stand a chance in hell because of what we feed to them. I am doing this now. I have nothing else to lose. I'm now doing this as a way to actually practice medicine, to practice true medicine. Because what you guys have me doing is living a sham, a charade, a lie. And for that brief moment, I got to actually attend to people's needs and actually help them in a way that I'd never been able to help them as long as I've been under the guise of whatever the hell it is you guys have us doing. He does take the trinkets, the relics, the badge, the watch, and whatnot. He's like, for whatever reason, my daughter is dead. You can't control what she means to the people. You can't control what she means to me. So he's like, I'll take these, but not because of anything you're giving me or offering me or doing for me, but just because I want to have some type of lasting with my daughter. It's a really great scene, and as we get towards the end, I can now see why. I've been questioning why we keep going back and feeding into the Doctor Nichols piece of this. Why does this doctor keep coming up? But now, once we get to the end of this episode, it all sort of makes sense. Sims meets back up with Camille, his wife, and says that Bernard is trying to get the people of the silo to kill the murderers of the judge. And in doing so, will sort of be a hard reset in the silo. They will quickly forget about Jules. Everything will sort of go back to the status quo, and things will be what they are. And I'll be stuck here as the judge and not really have a say in anything. It's at that point that Camille kind of starts getting in her Iago bag again. It's like, well, no one can do what it is that you do better than you. So Amazon may have learned under you, but he's not you. You need to kind of take that by the balls and show that they need you as more than they need him. Solo presents to Jules that his true name is Cole Myers. Now, I immediately call BS on this because it's a little too quick. It reminded me in the way that the Joker used to say in The Dark Knight, like, you want to know how I got these scars? And he had like 3 different stories about how he was telling it. That's how that felt to me. It turns out I was in the right as we get along in this episode, but I knew immediately that that's not accurate. And the more and more that Solo speaks and does things, the more and more that I'm like, oh, we should not trust a single solitary thing that comes out of this man's mouth. In addition to the people that were killed recently outside of his vault, he just knows way too much about the outside world that makes me uncomfortable. I'm like, I don't necessarily know if he. I feel like everybody may have been wiped out in this world, and people may have been chasing him, and he just took refuge here. Like I'm starting to think that may have been the case. Like he's from an outside place, and he just lost it. He knows too much about this silo, so I don't know if that's all the case, but he may have just locked himself in a silo and just studied tape and videos and whatnot. But it just seems like there's a story to him that goes way beyond what he is presenting, and he gets pretty scary towards the tail end of this episode. Jules is sort of succumbing to the ramifications of her injury. She's starting to fall ill, and Solo goes to go find food to sort. He thinks the food will help her get better, so he goes to go look for stuff for her. We see Carla surrender, so she is captured, and then they're trying to get the other two. They've sort of lost Martha; they don't know where she's at. But the other two, Shirley and Knox, they're trying to find them. They have a read on them. While that chase is still happening, Lucas Kyle is brought in to Bernard to have a conversation, and Bernard dangles the fact that, hey, you're not going to survive in those mines. That mine's uncomfortable. He's only done one day there, and he looks like all hell is broken loose. He's like, hey, you're not going to survive in those mines. I broke this hard drive because it was a red relic. However, I now need to know what's on it, and I no longer have the luxury of being ignorant to what's on this. I need to know what was on this hard drive. Meadows told me that you saw things in much the way that she did, and she's a smarter person than that. And she said, I think you are from somebody who could put this hard drive together. So I need you to reassemble this hard drive. I need to know what's on it. I'm going to give you free access to this room, free day, do whatever it is you need to do, but give me that information. Lucas is kind of looking a little bit shocked. He's like, look, I could easily go to anybody in IT, and there's 3 or 4 people there who could do this probably just as well as you. But I know you want to do it, and I know you're driving to do it. You have a drive and a desire to do it because you can't last 5 years in that mine. It's interesting because he could find somebody else to do it, but he wouldn't. He wouldn't want anybody else to know what it is that he's doing because he'd be going against the pact, and therefore, while he is the highest point, the mayor of this silo, he started doing things that were blatantly going against the pact. People would question that and give Sims a reason to sort of rise up. But Lucas is not in any position to fight that or combat that in any way, so he sort of just has to take it on the chin. Amundsen tells Sims of the plan that he has to capture Shirley and Knox. It gets stonewalled outside of just yeah, we're going to do this, and kind of leaves him in the dark, which is what happens when you're a judge. You sort of don't get the rules or regulations of what actually is happening. Camille takes into her own hands and goes to stop them from being captured and killed, basically, in the middle of the silo. He says, we're going to do this in the name of Judge Sims, who is now your new judge. You may not have heard of all of this. I am Judge's wife. We're taking these two and we're going to give them justice. Even though they may have killed Judge Meadows, they still have to stand trial. They still need to go see a judge. And Judge Sims is the new judge, so I'm taking them to them. She does not take them to the judge. In fact, Sims has no clue that this is even happening. Camille takes the two of them into an alley in hiding where there are no cameras. It's to a person in janitorial who feels that he is the sole reason why the silo would not exist or manage itself without him. But Camille clearly puts the fear of God into this man. So she goes there, threatens him, and says, hey, these two people need to have safe passage. You go stay with your ex for a while. These two are going to use this place as a spot to get safe haven. So the Raiders are going to be coming, and as they go back and forth, hopefully they can hang here a little bit before they have to come out and figure out their next step. And they ask why she's helping. She doesn't really go into it, but you can tell that there's a reason, a method to her madness. Specifically, though, the janitor, when they do come in, she's like, look, they ask him well, if we have your key and you leave and then we leave, how are you going to get a key to get back into your place? Like, I don't know. I'm sure Camille, when that time comes, will get me my key. She knows people and knows how to do things, but that's not a question that I can ask right now because I know how crazy she is. I just know that when she returns here, if you're still here, that's not going to be good for you. You don't want to be here when she gets back. So it's clear that Camille has way more of her hands in the pot than is currently showing, and a lot of people are frightened of her, and probably understandably so. She is very manipulative and behind the scenes of what she does. In a brief moment, Knox kind of says, "I'm sorry" to Shirley. Like, look, I took the pacifist way. I want to go ask nicely, and now we're going to end up in this situation. And Shirley's like, we were damned if we do either way. We would just already be dead if we did it my way. Hanks and Billings discussed that as radical as Knox and Shirley were, they were not killers. They did not murder Meadows. So they need to get a read on where Paige Kennedy's body is or where Paige Kennedy is. Just try to get some more information on what it is that actually happened. And they get a read on him and kind of find out that he might still be alive. As the next night happens, they get into bed. This is when you realize that Sims has really no clue what Camille is up to. And Sims says, like, yeah, I went to Amundsen to ask some questions. I got stonewalled. And Camille kind of legs out her plan and says that, hey, look, I think we want to make Amundsen look so bad at his job, like, so that there's nobody else that can do what it is that needs to be done besides you. And so she is taking them off the board and saying that they failed. They that Amundsen failed to do what Sims would have already done. So I'm taking them, hiding them, and sort of putting them back on the board, giving them a fighting chance to get away, so that Egg can be on the face, and so that at the very least, Bernard still needs Sims. As long as he shows some type of value, Camille is keeping her husband in the place so she can still be in some form or chase of power in all of this. As they go along, Bernard is told by Amundsen that Camille is the one who stashed them, and he gets furious. That's at that point when he realizes that, okay, Camille is in on this too. He doesn't know if necessarily if they talk, but he knows that Camille is just as manipulative as Sims is. And he uses some expletives to like go find those people, those mechanical so and so's right now. Below 134 is barricaded. You can't get in one way or the other. Like there's mechanical on one side, the folks trying to get in on the other side. Martha gets down there, but she can sort of hide in the background. But there's a huge like gate that's built with raiders on one side, sort of blockading it. So the only way you're going to get down back to the mechanical is that you basically have to drop down around, which is plan that Shirley and Knox have. Jules, back on the other silo, is searching around for a helmet. Again, while Solo is gone looking for food, she's still in a bad way, but she's going through like paperwork and whatnot to see if she can find out where helmets are stashed, where the last people helmets. She's looking through employee manifestos and whatnot. You get a quick glimpse. I immediately caught it that the name that Solo gave, Cole Myers, in the employee handbook was to a Cole Myers. I immediately saw, and I even paused the screen because I was like, that's not him. You can see Cole Myers is in one of the names. It looks nothing at all like Solo, like Steve Zahn. And so I was like, oh, but Jules isn't in her right frame of mind at this moment. She's looking specifically for a helmet. She doesn't clock that. So that part she misses for a second. And then she catches, I think Tiny, can't remember the full name, Samuel Trina, also known as Tiny, was the last person who had the helmet. So she goes to that apartment, looks through stuff, but finds a photo of Solo, a person named Solo, who is the Charles guy, and Trina, Tiny. And Solo and Tiny was what's on the frame. And immediately he's like, well, hold on, that's not our Solo. So something is amiss. Bernard goes back to Lucas and sort of sees what he has come up with after putting the hard drive together and learns that this isn't our silo necessarily. This is a map of a silo, but both of these maps have lines sort of coming out of both IT and the judicial levels. And we've sort of already heard from the other silo with Solo that power is being fed. That line is a power line going through. So there's power being fed. And then we also learn that there's a tunnel at the very bottom of the silo, um, probably hidden underwater, that probably connects, I would imagine, connects all these silos. I feel like there's a way that they connect every single one of these silos, and then build up water behind them so that there's no way that these guys are ever going to get one to the other unless an emergency happens and you're just like, cool, we're going to have to swim through the other. Like, I think that is what that shows, that these are all sort of, all these silos are connected in some way or another. Bernard's like, cool, you get another 20, you've done enough to get another 24 hours of respite in here, keep working. At that point, that Lucas says, hey, there's another thing. There's a love letter hidden in the folder here from Salvador Quinn that wrote to his wife. It's a love letter that then, oddly enough, gets weird and changes into code, which is code that Meadows had sort of deciphered that now Lucas has to try to get ahead of. Billings and Hank find Patrick Kennedy in a hole in the wall, literally, in a bad way. He's bleeding out. They have him at gunpoint, but Patrick Kennedy is very much like, nope, you guys are the problem. You guys are on that side. You are all a part of the conspiracy. He's very much in this conspiracy, understandably so. He's been through hell. But he basically yells out, the pact is just to keep us in line. It's kind of like I don't like to use the term Bible because it's not quite that, but it's a book that's built to keep us moral and keep us on the straight and narrow as far as some people see it, right? But it's all a lie. I'm a threat to everybody because of what I know. And Billings mentions, because like Billings is holding him at gunpoint. He's like, well, are you going to shoot me? He's like, well, I will only have to use my weapon if you pose a threat. It's at that point that Kennedy's like, well, I am a threat. Because of what's in my brain, I'm a threat to you at all times. So at that point that Billings moves in a little bit closer and gives him the flyer that he found in Jules' apartment. And Kennedy immediately was like, find me a doctor. Get me healthy, get me well, and I will tell you everything that you want to know and the things that you don't want to know. And so this is where I think comes in Dr. Nichols, his whole doctor piece, and him saying, like, I finally get to perform medicine that I actually care about, that actually means something. I think there's going to be a way that Camille Billings connects, now that they had that little chance meeting, connects Dr. Nichols to Billings and all of these guys to get Patrick Kennedy back on the mend. Knox and Shirley return to the Porters and choke out Calvin and get the equipment needed to do the quote-unquote illegal drop down, which is basically by a cable wire, essentially, from where their level all the way down to mechanical. Knox also reclaims the trinket that Martha gave Calvin in the name of Jules, even though they all know it's like, even if this isn't Jules, I want it back because I don't want you saying that it's Jules, because that all has a markup or a value. Knox and Shirley then leap off of their floor down to mechanical with a cable. It's like one of those wired cables. And so they make it down their way. Some folks in mechanical start grabbing them up, and then Amundsen sees it, cuts the cable, and it takes a big chunk and gash out of Knox. So he got injured there. They climb up, they get in, and they're good. Amundsen then radios to Bernard, like, yeah, they got away. And Bernard's like, I can see that. I'm watching this in real time. And he reaches out to Billings, like, Billings, I need you. They're down on your level now. I need you to be in charge of this hunt for them. And Billings says, yeah, I will do what it is that you asked me to. I will 100% back up the pact and whatever it is that I am being asked to do, while standing in the room holding Patrick Kennedy with Camille, with his wife Billings, and with Hank. So that team is that unit is sort of forming within all of this. They are the folks who are about to have their eyes open and don't quite know what's going on. You have mechanical, you have judicial, but now there's this little third faction that's sort of forming in the middle of there that doesn't really belong or fight for either, but wants to just know the truth. The truthers, we'll call them that. Lastly, back in Silo 17 with Solo and Jules. Jules is becoming in a bad way. So Solo finally returns back with some food. She covers up the photos to not show that she knows what she knows. She starts telling like, "Hey, look, I've been looking for a helmet. Looking for a helmet, and it led me to Trina Samuel's apartment, who was the girlfriend of Solo, which should trigger, like you say, your Solo." And then he says, "Yeah, I haven't thought about that name in a long time." And Jules calls him out on his BS, like, "You're lying. You're lying to me now, and I don't know why you're lying." Because this photo, she shows him a photo that says Solo and Tiny, and then the name on the manifesto, the name that the full name that he gave. He's like, "These people are not you. You're not an IT. You're not a shadow. You're not this person." And whatever that does, then that sets him off. And he just starts repeating at high decibels, yelling in her face, almost animalistically, about how he is an IT and how he is the shadow. He is the IT shadow. He is the IT shadow. He is the IT shadow, to the point where Jules has to say it back to him just to kind of like appease him and to calm him down. You can see that he's a little startled by how he may have affected Jules. She gets a little rattled, and you can see that it may have had an effect on him. And then she buys herself enough space to get away from him to sort of sprint out of there. She then returns to Tiny's apartment to sort of do another check. And mind you, she is still not doing well. Like, she opens up her wound to get a good look at it. Obviously, there's no doctor here on this silo, and she's in a very bad way. In this, she gets a last ditch effort to get enough energy to look a little bit further. She looks under the bed, finds the helmet, and it kind of gets this energy like, "Okay, cool, I got the helmet. Let me go back," and just passes out. And that's the episode. We There's not a lot energy wise where this isn't one of those faster moving episodes like the last one was, where there's like a lot of things happening. There's a lot of slow, deliberately paced pieces in here, but these are all sort of important little nuggets that happen in there. I think the building of the hard drive and getting to see sort of what we hear from Solo is that like there's lines of power coming into each of these solos, and it looks like they may all have a tunnel underneath all of them that are connected. We get to see, we still don't have the code piece of it, but we're getting there. Um, we already didn't trust Solo. I didn't, but now it's even more so that he's a blatant liar, and what he's hiding, I think, is going to be. Jules is in a bad way. She's already not healthy there, but she's also now in danger because she has somebody that just actively lies to her consistently, and so, and now wants her to do something for him. I think she might have to do the water pump thing for him, just for him to give her some help health wise. Like, she may have to do that piece while ill just to sort of appease him so she can get off of there and go handle her stuff. And I think what's going to happen is she does that job there. Instead of having to go back outside, she may be able to use the tunnel underneath to get to her, back to her levels. It's going to be the very next one next door. Um, but yeah, solid episode, not as intense and story moving as the previous, but this is one of those world building where they just like, I'm going to explain and put a lot of things on the board, um, to sort of help you out as we go along. And I think the biggest piece of this is that Camille Sims, she's the one you got to watch. It ain't Rob. Rob will do stuff in front of your face. Camille will do it behind your back, and that might be more dangerous, especially for a person like Bernard. What did you guys think about this episode of Silo called Descent? Go ahead and leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on X at Hollywood AVI. You can hit us up on email at hollywoodalreadydidit@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name. That's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any other place podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.